What's up, everybody, and welcome back to week 6 of the Prophet series. This week we'll be discussing the book of Ezekiel and the topic of glory and holiness, and you may be shocked to hear that it's actually not the same thing, which I was shocked to hear. So, before me and Jesus get into this, I just want to preface by saying I'm going to read from the script behind me. So, hope y'all all enjoy and learn something new. So, much can be learned about the glory and holiness of God when examining Ezekiel 1 through 3 and 8 through 11. First, in Ezekiel chapters 1 through 3, God speaks to Ezekiel from his throne chariot, appointing him to warn the Israelites of breaking their covenant with God. This interaction would have been shocking for Ezekiel, given that God's glory appeared in Babylon and not in the Temple of Jerusalem. Mara Miller explains that God has established Jerusalem as his dwelling place forever. This teaches us that the first point about God's glory, that it is not limited to a location. Ezekiel even makes this idea clear in verses 1:15 through 21 as he explains how the four wheels beneath the throne chariot, the Spirit was in control to move wherever he desired. Additionally, Bible Project explains that the Hebrew word glory is kavod, meaning weight or being heavy, but it also communicates significance and importance. This understanding differs from the common Western understanding of glory as fame, praise, or personal achievement. Rather, biblical authors would use kavod to describe the physical appearance of God's significance when he showed up in person. Ezekiel's references to fire, a rainbow, and a bright light don't just describe God's physical presence, but they reveal the weight of who God is. Therefore, Ezekiel's first vision and encounter with God in chapters 1 through 3 teach us that God's glory is the manifestation of his holiness, not simply something that's pretty to look at. Then, about a year later, Ezekiel has another vision where God takes him on a tour of the temple, showing him Israel's idolatry, ending the vision with his glory moving from the temple and stopping on the mountain east of Jerusalem. I believe that this is significant because it shows that a religious building does not determine God's presence when the people in that building are full of unrepentant sin. What this reveals about God's holiness is that his glorious presence cannot remain in a temple full of idolatry and people whose hearts are turned away from him. However, God does not leave without giving the people hope that he will become a sanctuary for those in exile, and one day he will give the people a new soft heart. In Ezekiel 9, we see that God's glory gives him authority to judge, and his holiness ensures his judgment is righteous and just. In Ezekiel 9:4, before he judges the people, he has a mark placed on their foreheads of those who grieve the lament over the sin of Jerusalem. Wright explains that just because the Israelites are God's chosen people does not excuse them from God's judgment. In fact, their privilege makes them even more exposed to his judgment. This further shows how God's holiness cannot accept sin even from his own people. However, God's judgment is just, which is revealed when he acknowledges that those who are grieved by sin marking their foreheads. This demonstrates how his glory and holiness give him the authority to judge and do so justly. Overall, Ezekiel chapters 1 through 3 and 8 through 11 show how God's glory cannot be limited to one location, as well as how his holiness cannot tolerate sinful hearts unwilling to turn to him. While I originally saw God's glory and holiness only as synonyms used to describe God, this new understanding teaches me more deeply about the character of God. Ultimately, these visions reveal that God's holiness requires covenant faithfulness, while his glory reveals his power and presence. So I hope you guys enjoyed this week's episode, and I hope you guys learned something new about the glory and holiness of God. I know I sure did. And yeah, that's all. Bye, guys.